The Cincinnati Bengals are heating up once again, and I believe they can be a contender in the AFC like they were last season when they got hot and made it all the way to the Super Bowl. If you're new here, consider subscribing and dropping a like on the video if you guys are new to the channel. And I haven't done this whole video thing in a while, so there's a lot to cover over the NFL season that I've missed. I wasn't too sure what video I wanted to make my first one back, but why not give the Cincinnati Bengals some love for what they were able to do this past Sunday against the Tennessee Titans, going into Nashville and winning 20-16 against one of the better teams over the last half of the season in the Titans. The last time these two teams played, we all know, was the divisional game last year where the Bengals once again, they went into Nashville, took care of business, and moved on to the AFC Championship game. And it was a similar type of game. It was a very defensive battle, not a whole lot of offense, but the Bengals were able to make a few more plays on the offensive side of the ball with Joe Burrow and T. Higgins. And that really was the difference in the game, and the Bengals secured yet another victory, which gives them a W in their last 5 of 6 games, which is similar to what they did last year when they got hot at the end of the year, again to ramp up for the playoffs. And I also want to mention that the Bengals are doing this without many of their key players. Jamar Chase did not play yesterday against the Titans, and he hasn't played in the last few games due to a hip injury that he suffered against the Falcons multiple weeks ago. And Joe Mixon, the running back one, who's kind of had an up and down year, but he's been balling as of the last month of the season. He suffered a concussion last week against the Steelers. He was unable to go against the Titans. So there's probably your 2 best offensive weapons that were not able to suit up against a very nice Titans defense. And that's where I want to talk about Joe Burrow and T. Higgins a little bit, because Joe Burrow, he started off the year a little bit rough against the Steelers in week 1. He had a 5 turnover game. And people were kind of panicking for the Bengals after that and saying it was going to be a Super Bowl hangover. They're not going to be able to compete in the AFC, all of that nonsense after the first week of the season. And I sat back and said he didn't play in the preseason. He missed multiple weeks of practice heading up to the NFL season due to his appendix injury. I thought, okay, some of it was rust. Some of it was some timing and all those other issues that accumulate in an NFL game. I think he'll be fine. And it turns out that is exactly the case. The first 5 games were pretty slow for Burrow, knowing his standards. And I think over the last month and a half, he's been a top 3, top 4 quarterback. And he's been pretty spectacular without some of the best players on his team, which I think is the most impressive part about it. For the season, he's completing 68% of his passes for 3,160 yards, 23 touchdowns, and 8 interceptions for a 101 quarterback rating. A very nice stat line with 6 games left to go, and I think he has a chance to break his career high in touchdowns. It'll be kind of close, but if he can continue his hot streak, which he's done the last month or so of the season, he definitely has a chance to break that and put up another career year. Another big piece of the puzzle for the Bengals during this stretch has been their defense. Their defense has quietly been one of the best in the league, and they don't get a ton of recognition because there's not a lot of stars on that defense. They just have a collection of very good players. One of those players being DJ Reader, and he was playing at a Pro Bowl level before tearing his MCL in week number 3. He got put on IR and missed multiple games, but made his return against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and his impact has been huge the last 2 games, especially against Derrick Henry and the Titans this past Sunday. He really clogged up the run game, and Henry had one of his worst games of the season, largely due to his impact on the defensive line. One of the craziest stats through about 2 months of the season was how good the Bengals' second half defense was. It took all the way through week number 7 for them to give up a touchdown in the second half. And you're going to win a whole lot of games if you do not let your opponent score a touchdown in the second half. So I think their defense definitely deserves also a lot of credit for what they've been able to do. They've quietly been one of the most consistent and best units in the league from the start of the season. And with DJ Reader coming back and getting more into the swing of things, I think their defense can continue to climb and get even better as we approach January and the playoffs. Now, the division isn't solely in the hands of the Bengals. They still have to worry about the Baltimore Ravens, who are currently ahead of them due to the tiebreaker from their Week 5 matchup. They're both 7-4, and I definitely think this division is going to come down to the wire. It may even come down to the last game of the season when the Bengals host the Ravens on January 8th, Week 18. There's no chance that the Browns or Steelers catch either of these teams. I think it's a 2-team race at this point. And really the main takeaway that I got from the Week 5 matchup was how evenly matched I thought both those teams were. The Bengals had a couple of opportunities at the Ravens goal line, knocking on the door, and they could not punch the ball in on 4th and goal, which basically costed them the game. So I think it's very possible that the second matchup between these teams decides the division, and that could be a huge and exciting game if it comes down to that. But looking ahead to next week for the Bengals, Jamar Chase is expected to return this week after missing the past 4 games due to his hip injury. Adam Schefter reported that today, and that's fantastic news for the Bengals. although their offense really hasn't missed him a whole lot, I think definitely down the stretch is going to make their offense a lot more dynamic. We've seen what Chase has been able to do with Burrow since entering the league. I think T. Higgins has done a fantastic job filling in for Chase and being the wide receiver 1. Of course, the Bengals still have Tyler Boyd, who's also one of the best wide receiver 3s, if not the best wide receiver 3 in the league. So they were able to manage the deficit of not having Jamar Chase out there. But now that you add him back into this offense, it's one of the most scary offenses in the league once again. And I think Joe Mixon will be back this week as well, so the Bengals will be full force against the Chiefs, who are the best team in the AFC in my opinion, and they are currently 9-2 and the number 1 seed in the AFC. And I think if the Bengals beat the Titans and then follow that up by beating the best team in the AFC at home, I think the Bengals would really turn heads as we get into December football. But their last 6 games are definitely not easy. After the Chiefs, they have the Browns, they have the Buccaneers, they have the Patriots, the Bills, and the Ravens. All those teams are fringe playoff teams. I'll be very curious to see how Deshaun Watson is for the Browns in his second start. That would be against the Bengals. The Buccaneers, they've had some issues this season, but I still think they're a solid team that have the capability of beating some of the better teams in the league. Patriots, I think, are solid as well. Their defense especially is really fantastic. Going at New England on Christmas Eve could definitely be a tough task for the Bengals to do. And then the final 2 games of the season, you have the Bills at home, and then you have the Ravens at home. The 2 home games against some very good teams, and I have a feeling that both of those games will determine if the Bengals, A, make the playoffs, or B, can even win the division in the AFC North. But in my eyes, what the Bengals are doing now is pretty similar to what they did last year. Started off a little bit slow, had some injuries, got some people back, and then towards the later stretch of the season, they really started to get hot, and by the time you get to the playoffs, that's exactly what you want. We've seen multiple teams over the years, like the Steelers a couple years ago, like the Cardinals even this past year, that start off really strong, go on huge win streaks to start the season, and then as the season comes to an end, they start to fall off a little bit, they lose multiple games, and they get in the playoffs and they just run out of momentum. So you really want to find your team peaking at the right time, and if the Bengals can keep this up over the next 6 weeks, they're going to be doing that once again. And I think that was a huge factor in them making the Super Bowl last year and riding that success into the playoffs. But I'll be very interested to see the Bengals against the Chiefs this weekend. I think it'll be a great matchup. The Bengals beat them last year in Cincinnati, and they beat them at Kansas City in the AFC Championship game. The Chiefs are going to want some revenge. The Bengals are going to want to keep up their hot streak. So I think it's going to be a fun one. I think both offenses are going to have a good game. But in the end, the Bengals are still a really great team. And if they continue peaking at the right time with the return of Chase and Mixon and Reader, I think this team has a chance to be a Super Bowl contender for the 2nd year in a row. But thank you guys so much for watching the video. If you guys are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe and drop a like on the video if you guys did enjoy it. But let me know what you think of the Cincinnati Bengals and if you think they have a chance to compete for Super Bowl this year, or if you don't think they're good enough to make it to the Super Bowl for 2 years in a row. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.